When trainers first stepped into Kanto in the mid-1990s, the tiny Game Boy screen felt like a doorway instead of a toy. Towns, forests, and caves flowed together into a single, quiet journey, and beneath those simple sprites, the world seemed to be hiding decisions players were never meant to notice. Somewhere deep in Viridian Forest, a small electric creature wandered between the trees, not yet the face of the series, just another rare encounter that felt special without anyone knowing why. Behind the scenes, developers were quietly debating which Pokémon should represent the entire franchise, leaning at first toward a different pink fairy before the anime, and a single yellow partner changed everything. That choice reshaped Kanto's routes, its art, and even the way players felt about walking beside a favorite companion, turning one ordinary forest encounter into the beating heart of a global phenomenon. Before you drift any further, make sure to subscribe so once we reach 1,000 subs, I can reduce the ads and tell me where you're watching from tonight. The creature in question was Pikachu, and its encounter rate in the original games was quite low in Viridian Forest, making it feel rare to stumble upon. Players who did catch one often treated it as a special companion, not realizing they were holding what would later become the series' icon. Internal developer notes suggested that Clefairy was originally considered as the mascot due to its role in the Pokémon fairy tale theme of the time, but after the anime launched, the decision to spotlight Pikachu as Ash's partner reshaped the entire brand. That change was reflected in Pokémon Yellow, released in 1998 in Japan and 1999 worldwide, where the creature was elevated to starter status, complete with a unique overworld sprite that followed the player around. Yellow introduced an obscure detail that many overlook today, the creature's happiness mechanic, which displayed moods when spoken to, ranging from cheerful to angry, depending on how well it was treated. This small touch made players feel like they were traveling with a living partner, rather than just a battle tool, and the feature was a precursor to mechanics in later generations, like friendship evolution. It was also the first time the series leaned into tying the games directly to the anime, with Jessie and James appearing alongside their iconic companion, Meowth, further bridging game and show. The Kanto region itself was built around a simple but effective design philosophy where every route, cave, and town fed into a sense of progression without needing excessive dialogue. Players traveling through Viridian Forest toward Pewter City weren't just meeting their first trainers and their first gym, they were experiencing the blueprints of exploration that would define the series. Viridian's maze of trees gave way to Brock's rocky arena, establishing the idea of themed gyms tied to regional geography. This design choice reinforced the idea that Kanto was a living ecosystem, not just a collection of maps. Early sprite work adds another layer of fascination, as the original Japanese red and green games featured sprites that were in many cases rough and intimidating. Pikachu's sprite in those versions had smaller eyes and a bulkier frame, giving it a more rodent-like appearance than the rounded mascot fans recognize today. When the games were released internationally as Red and Blue in 1998, many sprites were redrawn for clarity and appeal. This included giving Pikachu a cuter, more expressive face, beginning the slow shift toward its modern identity. Collectors today often compare the differences in sprite work, noting that Kanto's creatures sometimes looked like entirely different designs depending on which version was being played. Another obscure fact ties to the Game Boy hardware itself, as the system's limited sound chip was pushed to its limits to create the iconic cries of each Pokémon. Pikachu's cry in the original games was a series of distorted tones that, while distinctive, bore little resemblance to the character's later anime voice. It wasn't until Pokemon Yellow on the Game Boy Color that its cry was updated to match the high-pitched Pika sound familiar from the show, marking one of the first direct crossovers between game and television identity. This detail often surprises newer fans who assume the voice was always consistent across media. The Kanto region's layout also hides development shortcuts, as the placement of Viridian Forest directly between the player's home in Pallet Town and the first gym in Pewter City wasn't arbitrary. It served as a training ground designed to teach players the fundamentals of catching and battling before they faced Brock, whose rock-type Pokemon resisted many of the common early catches, like Pidgey and Rattata. This placement encouraged players to explore and experiment with team building, a philosophy that would carry forward into every future game. The decision to make Brock's Onix intimidating but beatable with careful strategy was deliberate, ensuring that the first gym felt like a real challenge rather than a simple formality. Kanto's towns themselves are filled with obscure design choices that reflect both the hardware limitations and the creative ambitions of the development team. Pallet Town, the starting location, was deliberately kept small to make the world feel vast by contrast. Its simple layout of just a few buildings and a single point of exit created a sense of departure that resonated emotionally with players. The name Pallet, derived from a color palette, was part of a naming convention that extended across the region, with towns like Viridian, Pewter, and Cerulean all referencing colors or materials. This thematic consistency gave Kanto a cohesive identity that felt intentional, even as the developers admitted in later interviews that some names were chosen more for their sound than their meaning. Pewter City's museum, often overlooked by players rushing to the gym, contains one of the earliest pieces of in-game lore about ancient Pokemon. The fossils displayed there, Helix and Dome, would later become interactive items tied to the resurrection mechanic introduced on Cinnabar Island. This subtle foreshadowing rewarded players who paid attention to environmental storytelling, a technique that would become a hallmark of the series. The museum's exhibit on space also hinted at the existence of extraterrestrial Pokemon, a concept that wouldn't be fully explored until the introduction of creatures like Clefairy and later Deoxys. Cerulean City introduced the idea of water as a central element in Pokemon gameplay, not just through Misty's gym, but through the design of the city itself. The bridge to the north, Nugget Bridge, became famous for its gauntlet of trainers and the mysterious encounter at the end where a Team Rocket grunt tried to recruit the player. This was one of the first moments where the game hinted at a larger conflict beyond gym battles, planting seeds for the story that would unfold on the SS Anne and later in Sylph-Copen. Cerulean also contained one of the earliest optional encounters in the series, a house with a strange back door that led to a hidden area where a rare Pokemon could be found. These secrets, scattered throughout Kanto, rewarded exploration and gave the region a sense of depth that kept players returning to areas they thought they had fully explored. Vermilion City stands out as one of the most memorable locations in Kanto due to the SS Anne, a cruise ship that served as both a dungeon and a pivotal story moment. Players boarding the ship encountered a series of trainers, including their rival, before reaching the ship's captain, who, after being helped, rewarded the player with HM01 Cut. This was the first hidden machine in the game, introducing the concept of field moves that could alter the overworld and unlock new areas. The SS Anne itself was tied to one of the most enduring myths in Pokemon history, the belief that the ship could be prevented from leaving by not boarding it until later in the game. While this myth was false, its persistence speaks to the way players engaged with Kanto's world, constantly searching for hidden mechanics and secrets that might exist just beyond the visible code. Vermilion's gym, led by Lieutenant Surge, introduced electric-type Pokémon as a challenge that punished players who relied too heavily on water or flying types. His Raichu, an evolved form of Pikachu, was often the first time players encountered a Pokémon that directly paralleled their own starter in Yellow version. This subtle narrative tension, the idea that Lieutenant Surge's philosophy of evolving Pokémon immediately contrasted with the player's bond with their unevolved Pikachu, added emotional weight to an otherwise straightforward battle. The trash can puzzle in his gym, while frustrating, became one of the most iconic gym mechanics in the series, teaching players that not every challenge in Kanto would be solved through brute force. Lavender Town remains one of the most discussed locations in Kanto, not just for its in-game content, but for the legends that grew around it. The town's somber music, played in a minor key with eerie tones, was designed to evoke mourning and loss, fitting for a location centered around the Pokémon Tower, a graveyard for deceased Pokémon. The developers wanted players to feel uncomfortable here, and they succeeded. The music became so notorious that urban legends emerged, claiming it caused physical or psychological effects in players, stories that were entirely fabricated but gained traction due to the internet's early culture of sharing myths as facts. In reality, the music was simply a creative choice meant to differentiate Lavender from the more upbeat themes of other towns, but its impact on players was profound enough to inspire decades of discussion. The Pokémon Tower itself introduced ghost-type Pokémon in a way that felt genuinely unsettling. The uncatchable Marowak ghost, a spirit that could not be defeated through normal means, was one of the first moments in the series where a Pokémon's presence felt tragic rather than adventurous. The backstory, that the ghost was the mother of a Cubone killed by Team Rocket, added a layer of emotional depth that contrasted sharply with the game's otherwise lighthearted tone. This moment, where the player used the Sylph Scope to reveal the ghost's true form before laying it to rest, was a turning point in Kanto's narrative, showing that the world was not always safe or kind. Lavender Town also introduced the Name Raider, an NPC who allowed players to change the nicknames of their Pokémon, a seemingly minor feature that nonetheless became a staple of the series. The town's Pokémon Center, which like all others provided free healing, also contained an NPC who hinted at the existence of other regions, a subtle piece of world building that wouldn't be fully realized until Gold and Silver. Celadon City, the largest city in Kanto, was designed to feel like a bustling metropolis compared to the quieter towns that preceded it. Its department store, spanning multiple floors, was the first place in the game where players could buy a wide variety of items, including TMs and evolution stones. The store's rooftop vending machines, which sold drinks that could be traded to NPCs for rare TMs, introduced the concept of item-based side quests that rewarded player curiosity. Celadon's gym, led by Erica, was filled with trainers who used grass-type Pokémon, a thematic choice that tied into the city's emphasis on nature and growth despite its urban setting. The presence of the Game Corner, Kanto's casino, added another layer of complexity to Celadon, as it introduced gambling mechanics that were both optional and deeply tied to the plot. Beneath the Game Corner was Team Rocket's hideout, a sprawling dungeon that required players to navigate puzzles and battles to reach Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, and secretly the final gym leader of Kanto. This twist, that the villainous organization's leader was also a respected figure in the Pokémon League, added moral ambiguity to the story. The hideout's design, with its spinning tiles and hidden items, was one of the most intricate dungeons in the original games. Players who explored thoroughly were rewarded with the Sylph Scope, an item that would later prove essential in Lavender Town, but the path to obtaining it was filled with enough challenges to make the victory feel earned. Celadon also contained Eevee, one of the most unique Pokémon in Kanto, gifted to the player in the back room of a building near the city's center. Eevee's ability to evolve into 3 different forms, depending on the stone used, made it a symbol of choice and potential, themes that resonated deeply with players who saw their own decisions reflected in its transformations. Fuchsia City introduced the Safari Zone, a sprawling area where traditional catching mechanics were replaced with a minigame that involved throwing bait and rocks at wild Pokémon. The Safari Zone was designed to feel like a real-world nature reserve, with different zones containing different species and the limited number of steps players could take before being forced to leave added tension to the experience. The reward for navigating the Safari Zone was access to rare Pokémon like Tauros, Seither, and Chansey, creatures that were difficult or impossible to find elsewhere in Kanto. The zone's design also hinted at the existence of a secret house deep within, which contained HM03 Surf, one of the most important moves in the game. Fuchsia's gym, led by Koga, was filled with invisible walls that created a maze requiring trial and error to navigate. This design choice, while frustrating for some players, reinforced the idea that each gym in Kanto was meant to test not just battling skills, but patience and problem-solving. Koga's poison-type Pokémon, including his signature Wheezing and Muck, were among the most annoying to battle due to their ability to inflict status conditions that lingered long after the fight ended. The city also contained the Warden's House, where an elderly NPC tasked the player with finding his missing gold teeth in the Safari Zone, rewarding completion of this side quest with HM04 strength. This move, like Surf and Cut before it, was essential for progressing through the game, and its acquisition felt like unlocking a new layer of Kanto's world. Saffron City, located in the center of Kanto, was initially blocked off by a thirsty guard, a humorous obstacle that required the player to bring a drink from Celadon's vending machines. This simple puzzle, while easily solved, added a sense of progression and interconnectedness to the region's design. Once accessible, Saffron revealed itself as a hub of activity, containing not one, but 2 major story locations, Sylph Company and the Fighting Dojo. Sylph Company, the largest building in Kanto, was a multi-floor dungeon where Team Rocket had taken control, forcing the player to battle through waves of grunts and navigate a complex warp tile system to reach Giovanni. The reward for saving Sylph Company was the Master Ball, the only guaranteed catch item in the game, a prize that carried significant weight for players deciding which legendary Pokémon to use it on. The building's design, with its sterile corporate aesthetic and teleporting mechanics, felt more futuristic than any other location in Kanto, hinting at the advanced technology that existed within the Pokémon world. Saffron's gym, led by Sabrina, was famous for its warp tile puzzle, a labyrinth that required players to step on the correct tiles of sequence to reach the gym leader. Sabrina's psychic-type Pokémon, particularly her Alakazam, were among the most powerful in the game, and her gym was often one of the last players challenged due to its difficulty. The Fighting Dojo, located near the gym, offered an alternative challenge, where players could battle a dojo master and choose between Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan as a reward. This choice, while seemingly minor, was one of the earliest examples of branching rewards in the series, teaching players that their decisions had consequences. Cinnabar Island, accessed only by surfing south from Pallet Town or east from Fuchsia City, was designed to feel isolated and mysterious. The island's abandoned mansion, filled with journal entries detailing experiments on Mew and the creation of Mewtwo, introduced one of the darkest pieces of lore in Kanto. These entries, scattered across multiple floors and requiring careful reading to piece together, hinted at a story of scientific ambition gone wrong, a theme that would resonate throughout the franchise. The mansion itself was a dungeon requiring the player to manipulate statues to unlock doors, a puzzle that felt more cerebral than the combat-heavy challenges of other locations. Cinnabar's gym, led by Blaine, was filled with trivia questions that tested the player's knowledge of Pokémon, a unique mechanic that broke from the traditional battle-only format. Blaine's Fire-type Pokémon, including his Arcanine and Rapidash, were strong but beatable with the right strategy, and his gym was often one of the last visited due to Cinnabar's remote location. The island's lab, where fossils from Mount Moon could be revived into Omanate, Kabuto, or Aerodactyl, introduced the concept of bringing ancient Pokémon back to life, a mechanic that added depth to the world's history. Viridian City's gym, the final gym in Kanto, was notable for being inaccessible until after the player had obtained 7 badges. This delay built anticipation, and the reveal that Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, was also the gym leader created a narrative climax that tied the game's 2 main threads, gym battles and stopping Team Rocket, into a single confrontation. Giovanni's ground-type Pokémon, including his Raiden and Nidoking, were among the toughest in the game, and defeating him felt like a true culmination of the player's journey. The decision to make the final gym leader also the main antagonist was a storytelling choice that elevated Kanto's narrative beyond a simple collect and battle structure. Viridian Forest, the first dungeon most players encountered, was filled with bug-catching trainers and wild Pokémon like Caterpie and Weedle. These early encounters introduced players to the concept of type advantages, as bug-type moves were weak but effective against other bugs, teaching fundamental battle mechanics in a low-stakes environment. The forest's winding paths and hidden items rewarded exploration, and its peaceful music contrasted with the tension of future dungeons. Mount Moon, located between Pewter City and Cerulean City, was one of the longest and most complex dungeons in Kanto. Its multiple floors, filled with wild Zubat and Geodude, required careful navigation and resource management. The mountain introduced Team Rocket as a recurring threat, with grunts scattered throughout attempting to steal fossils. The choice between the Helix fossil and the Dome fossil, offered after defeating a super nerd, was one of the earliest branching decisions in the game, and the fossil's later revival on Cinnabar Island gave this choice long-term consequences. Mount Moon also contained moonstones, rare evolution items hidden in craters on the mountain's lowest floor. These stones, used to evolve Pokémon like Clefairy and Jigglypuff, were among the first items that felt truly valuable, requiring players to explore thoroughly to find them. Rock Tunnel, connecting Cerulean City to Lavender Town, was notable for being pitch black unless the player used HM05 Flash, a move that lit up the cave but was otherwise useless in battle. This design choice forced players to either navigate blind or teach Flash to a Pokémon, sacrificing a move slot for utility. The tunnel's wild Pokémon, including Onix and Machop, were tougher than those in earlier areas, and its trainers used diverse teams that required adaptability. The darkness itself became a defining feature, and many players remember Rock Tunnel as one of the most frustrating yet memorable parts of their journey through Kanto. The power plant, accessible only after obtaining Surf, was an optional dungeon filled with electric-type Pokémon. Its design, resembling an abandoned industrial facility, gave Kanto a post-apocalyptic edge that contrasted with the natural beauty of locations like Viridian Forest. The power plant's wild encounters included Magnemite, Magneton, and Voltorb, creatures that fit the mechanical theme of the location. At the deepest part of the facility was Zapdos, one of Kanto's 3 legendary birds, waiting to be encountered by players who had explored thoroughly. Zapdos's presence here, tied to the plant's machinery, reinforced the idea that legendary Pokémon in Kanto were integrated into the environment rather than existing in isolated, story-driven encounters. Seafoam Islands, a labyrinthine cave system connecting Fuchsia City to Cinnabar Island, required players to solve a puzzle involving pushing boulders into holes to block water currents. This puzzle, while optional since players could surf around the islands, rewarded completion with access to Articuno, the second of Kanto's legendary birds. The island's icy aesthetic and slippery floors added challenge to navigation, and the wild Pokémon encountered here, including Seal and Dugong, fit the frozen theme. Articuno's placement at the deepest level of the islands made it feel earned, a reward for players who took the time to solve the dungeon's intricate puzzles. Victory Road, the final dungeon before the Pokémon League, required players to use every HM they had obtained, strength, surf, flash, and more, to navigate its multi-floor layout. The dungeon's trainers used fully evolved Pokémon, signaling that the endgame was near. Victory Road's design, with its boulder puzzles and maze-like structure, served as a final test of the player's skills before facing the Elite Four. The wild Pokémon here, including Machop and Geodude, were tougher than in earlier areas, and the dungeon's length made it feel like a true gauntlet. Reaching the end of Victory Road and stepping into the Pokémon League building felt like crossing a threshold, a transition from adventure to legend. The Elite Four, consisting of Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance, each used a team themed around a specific type: ice, fighting, ghost, and dragon respectively. Their Pokémon were the strongest the player had faced outside of their rival, and the battles required careful strategy and preparation. Lorelei's Lapras and Dugong tested the player's ability to counter ice types, while Bruno's fighting type team punished those who relied on normal type moves. Agatha's ghost and poison types forced players to adapt to status effects, and Lance's dragon team, featuring his signature Dragonite, felt like facing a true champion. Defeating the Elite Four led to a final battle with the player's rival, now the Pokémon League champion, a narrative twist that elevated the game's emotional stakes. This battle, fought at the peak of the player's journey, felt like the culmination of a rivalry that had begun back in Pallet Town. The rival's team, evolved and powerful, mirrored the player's own growth, and defeating him marked the true end of Kanto's story. Cerulean Cave, accessible only after becoming champion, was the most dangerous location in Kanto. Its wild Pokémon included fully evolved forms like Raiden, Ditto, and Chansey, and its maze-like layout required careful navigation. At the deepest part of the Ozapet, Cave was Mewtwo, the most powerful Pokémon in the game, waiting at level 70. Mewtwo's presence here, tied to the journals in Cinnabar Mansion, completed the narrative arc of Kanto's darkest subplot. Catching Mewtwo felt like capturing lightning, a legendary creature born from human ambition and regret. The cave's difficulty, and the reward waiting at its end, made it the ultimate post-game challenge, a final test for players who wanted to truly complete their Kanto adventure. As we drift a little deeper into Kanto's design, it becomes clear that the region's true magic lay not just in its Pokémon or locations, but in the way it made players feel like they were exploring a living world. Every cave, every route, every town was filled with details that rewarded curiosity. The balance between challenge and accessibility, between story and exploration, created an experience that felt personal to every player. Kanto's Pokémon themselves were designed with a philosophy of simplicity and recognizability. The original 151 species were inspired by real-world animals, mythological creatures, and then everyday objects, a creative approach that made them feel both fantastical and grounded. Bulbasaur, the first Pokémon in the National Dex, was designed to resemble a dinosaur with a plant bulb on its back, symbolizing the fusion of nature and creature that defined many early designs. Its evolution line, culminating in Venusaur, emphasized growth and maturity, a theme that resonated with players who saw their starter Pokémon as a reflection of their own journey. Charmander, another starter, was inspired by salamanders and dragons, creatures associated with fire in various mythologies. Its evolution into Charizard, a dragon-like Pokémon that was not actually dragon-type due to a deliberate design choice, created a sense of mystery and frustration among players who expected it to be. Squirtle, the water-type starter, was designed to be cute and approachable, with its turtle-like appearance and round features making it instantly endearing. Its evolution into Blastoise, a tank-like creature with cannons on its back, represented a dramatic shift in aesthetic that rewarded players who trained it to its final form. The decision to offer 3 starters, each with a different type and personality, became a defining feature of the series and a template that every future generation followed. Pikachu, as discussed earlier, was designed to be cute and marketable, but its early appearance was much different from the sleek mascot it would become. The evolution of Pikachu's design over the years reflects the series' own evolution, from a Game Boy experiment to a global phenomenon. Raichu, its evolved form, was intentionally made less cute to give players a choice between power and aesthetics. A subtle commentary on the bond between trainer and Pokémon. Clefairy, the Pokémon that was almost the mascot, was designed to look like a fairy, with its pink coloration and whimsical design reflecting the magical tone that Game Freak originally envisioned for the series. Its evolution, Clefable, maintained this aesthetic while adding a sense of elegance. Clefairy's role in the early manga and promotional materials before Pikachu took over makes it a fascinating piece of Pokémon history. Jigglypuff, another pink Pokémon, was designed to be both cute and slightly eerie, with its large eyes and sing move that could lull opponents to sleep. Its role in the anime, where it famously drew on the faces of sleeping characters, cemented its place in popular culture. Wigglytuff, its evolution, was less iconic, but maintained the same playful aesthetic. Meowth, the Pokémon most associated with Team Rocket, was designed to resemble a Maneki Neko, a Japanese Lucky Cat figurine. This cultural reference gave Meowth a connection to real-world symbolism that many Western players didn't initially recognize. Persian, its evolution, was sleek and elegant, a design that reflected wealth and sophistication. Meowth's ability to learn Payday, a move that generated money after battle, tied directly into its Lucky Cat inspiration. Psyduck, one of the most memorable Pokémon in Kanto, was designed to look perpetually confused, with its constant headache reflected in its anime portrayal. This personality-driven design made Psyduck stand out among water types, and its evolution into Golduck, a more serious and composed form, represented a complete tonal shift. Mankey and Primeape, the fighting-type duo, were designed to embody rage and aggression, with their designs reflecting their temperamental nature. Growlithe and Arcanine, based on lions and mythological guardian dogs, were designed to feel noble and loyal. Arcanine's status as a legendary Pokémon in early lore, despite not being classified as one in gameplay terms, added to its mystique. Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath formed an evolution line based on tadpoles, with the visible spiral on their bodies representing their internal organs, a detail that some players found unsettling. Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam were based on psychics and magicians, with their names referencing the famous magic phrase, Abracadabra. Alakazam's spoon-bending design was inspired by Uri Geller, a real-world psychic who later sued Nintendo over the resemblance, a lawsuit that was ultimately unsuccessful. Machup, Machoke, and Machamp were designed to represent bodybuilders, with each evolution adding more muscle and power. Machamp's 4 arms, a design choice that made it one of the most visually distinctive Pokémon, were inspired by depictions of multi-armed deities in Hindu and Buddhist art. Bellsprout, Weepinbell, and Victreebel were based on carnivorous plants, with their designs reflecting the idea of nature as both beautiful and dangerous. Tentacool and Tentacruel, based on jellyfish, were often encountered while surfing, making them one of the most annoying Pokémon in Kanto, due to their high encounter rate. Geodude, Graveler, and Golem were based on rocks and boulders, with their designs emphasizing durability and strength. Golem's trade evolution requirement frustrated players who didn't have friends just to trade with, a design choice that encouraged social interaction, but also created barriers for solo players. Ponyta and Rapidash, based on horses with flaming manes, were designed to feel mythical, with their fire-type classification tying into legends of fiery steeds. Slowpoke and Slowbro had one of the most unique evolution methods in Kanto, as Slowbro was formed when a Shelder bit onto Slowpoke's tail, a symbiotic relationship that blurred the line between evolution and parasitism. Magnemite and Magneton, based on magnets and industrial design, were among the first Pokémon to feel truly mechanical, setting a precedent for future steel and electric types. Farfetch'd, a Pokémon based on a duck holding a leek, was inspired by a Japanese saying about unlikely events, making it one of the most culturally specific designs in Kanto. Its rarity and low stats made it more of a novelty than a competitive choice, but its charm endeared it to many players. Doduo and Dodrio, based on flightless birds with multiple heads, had designs that were both simple and bizarre. Dodrio's 3 heads, but wasn't each with a different personality, added depth to its character, though this detail was more explored in the anime than in the games. Seal and Dugong, based on seals and dugongs, were straightforward in their inspiration, with their ice and water typing making them useful for countering dragon types. Grimer and Muk, based on pollution and toxic waste, were designed to represent the darker side of industrialization. Their amorphous, slimy designs made them some of the most visually unsettling Pokémon in Kanto, and their connection to environmental themes gave them a subtle moral message. Shelder and Cloyster, based on clams and oysters, had designs that emphasized defense, with Cloyster's impossibly high defense stat making it nearly invincible against physical attacks. Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar, the ghost-type line, were based on ghosts and spirits from Japanese folklore. Gengar's shadowy appearance and mischievous nature made it one of the most popular Pokémon in Kanto, and its role in Lavender Town's storyline added to its mystique. Onyx, a massive rock snake, was designed to be intimidating, with Brock's Onix serving as one of the first major challenges in the game. Despite its imposing design, Onyx's low attack stat made it less useful in later battles, a discrepancy between appearance and gameplay that frustrated many players. Drowsy and Hypno, based on tapirs and hypnotists, had designs that were both creepy and fascinating. Hypno's pendulum and its lore about kidnapping children added a dark undertone to an otherwise whimsical series. Krabby and Kingler, based on crabs, were straightforward in design but effective, with Kingler's massive claw giving it a distinct silhouette. Voltorb and Electrode, based on Pokeballs, were designed to trick players into thinking they had found an item, a mechanic that added an element of surprise and danger to exploration. Their tendency to use self-destruct made encountering them frustrating but memorable. Exegcute and Executor, based on seeds and palm trees, had one of the most bizarre designs in Kanto, with Exegcute being a cluster of eggs with faces and Executor being a tall tree with multiple heads. This design, while strange, was memorable and gave the line a unique identity. Cubone and Marowak, based on orphaned creatures wearing the skulls of their deceased mothers, had one of the darkest backstories in Kanto. The lore surrounding Cubone, that in everyone wears its mother's skull, raised questions about the species' biology that have never been fully answered. Marowak's ghost in Lavender Town added emotional weight to this already tragic story. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, based on famous martial artists Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, were designed to represent different fighting styles, with Hitmonlee emphasizing kicks and Hitmonchan focusing on punches. Lickitung, based on the concept of a long tongue, was one of the stranger designs in Kanto, with its pink, blob-like appearance making it more cute than intimidating. Coughing and Wheezing, based on pollution and toxic gas, had designs that emphasized their connection to industrial waste. Wheezing's dual heads, a design element that made it visually distinct, also made it one of the most memorable poison types. Rhyhorn, Raiden, and their later evolution Rhyperior formed a line based on rhinoceroses and armored beasts. Raiden, notably, was the first Pokémon ever designed, making it a historically significant part of the franchise. Chansey, based on the concept of luck and healing, had a design that emphasized its role as a support Pokémon, with its egg-shaped body and gentle appearance making it instantly recognizable. Tangela, a Pokémon covered entirely in vines, had a design that left its true form a mystery, a detail that added to its intrigue. Kangaskhan, based on kangaroos, had a unique design where it appeared with a baby in its pouch from the moment it was encountered, raising questions about its life cycle that have never been fully explained. Horsia and Seadra, based on seahorses, were simple but effective designs, with Seadra's sharper, more aggressive appearance reflecting its higher evolution stage. Goldeen and Seeking, based on goldfish, were designed to be elegant, with Seeking's horn giving it a regal appearance. Staryu and Starmie, based on starfish, had designs that emphasized their alien-like quality, with Starmie's gem and psychic typing making it feel otherworldly. Mr. Mime, based on mimes and invisible walls, had one of the most humanoid designs in Kanto, a choice that made it both fascinating and slightly unsettling. Scyther and its evolution, Scizor, were based on mantises, with Scyther's blade-like arms making it one of the most visually striking bug types. Jinx, based on the concept of ice queens and opera singers, had a design that was later altered due to concerns about racial insensitivity, a decision that reflected evolving cultural awareness. Electabuzz and Magmar, based on electricity and fire, were designed as counterparts, with their muscular, humanoid forms making them feel powerful. Pinsir, based on stag beetles, had a design that emphasized its strength, with its massive horns being its defining feature. Tauros, based on bulls, was one of the strongest normal types in Kanto, with its speed and power making it a competitive staple. Magikarp and Gyarados formed one of the most iconic evolution pairs in Pokémon history, with Magikarp's weakness contrasting sharply with Gyarados' overwhelming power. This transformation, based on the Chinese legend of the carp that climbs the waterfall and becomes a dragon, resonated deeply with players who saw it as a metaphor for perseverance. Lapras, based on plesiosaurs and the Loch Ness Monster, had a design that emphasized grace and mystery. Its role as a transportation Pokémon in the anime added to its appeal. Ditto, a Pokémon capable of transforming into any other Pokémon, had a simple blob-like design that reflected its versatile nature. Its connection to Mew in fan theories, due to shared traits like color and transformation ability, added layers of intrigue. Eevee and its evolutions, Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, formed a line based on adaptability, with each evolution representing a different element. This design philosophy, where one Pokémon could branch into multiple forms, became a recurring theme in later generations. Porygon, the first artificial Pokémon, had a design that reflected early computer graphics, with its blocky, polygonal appearance making it distinct. Its role in a controversial anime episode that caused seizures in viewers led to it being largely absent from the anime, an unfortunate consequence of its association with that incident. Omanite, Omastar, Kabuto, and Kabutops, the fossil Pokémon of Kanto, were based on extinct marine creatures. Their designs that emphasized the ancient history and the idea of bringing the past back to life. Aerodactyl, based on pterosaurs, was designed to feel aggressive and primal, with its rock and flying typing making it unique among Kanto's Pokémon. Snorlax, based on the concept of laziness and sleep, had a design that was both adorable and imposing. Its role as an obstacle blocking routes added a puzzle element to the game, requiring players to obtain the Pokeflute to wake it. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, the legendary bird trio, were based on the concept of elemental guardians, with their designs emphasizing their connection to ice, electricity, and fire respectively. Their placement in hidden locations across Kanto made encountering them feel like discovering secrets. Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite formed the pseudo-legendary line of Kanto, with their designs evolving from serpentine elegance to a more draconic appearance. Dragonite's cheerful demeanor, contrasting with its powerful stats, made it a fan favorite. Mewtwo, the ultimate legendary Pokémon of Kanto, was designed to feel artificial and powerful, with its sleek, alien-like appearance reflecting its origin as a genetically engineered creature. Its backstory, detailed in the Cinnabar Mansion journals and expanded in the first Pokémon movie, gave it a tragic depth that resonated with audiences. Mew, the mythical Pokémon that was added to the game at the last minute, was designed to be cute and mysterious, with its pink coloration and feline features making it instantly appealing. Its status as a hidden Pokémon, unobtainable through normal gameplay, turned it into a legend among players. If you're still awake halfway through, maybe subscribe before you drift off, and tell me what time it is where you're watching from. Kanto's competitive battling scene, though not as developed as it would become in later generations, laid the groundwork for strategies that are still used today. The concept of type advantages, introduced in the very first battles, became the foundation of competitive play. Players quickly learned that water beats fire, fire beats grass, and grass beats water, a simple rock-paper-scissors dynamic that grew more complex as additional types were introduced. The original games had a metagame that was rough around the edges, with certain Pokémon and moves dominating due to unbalanced mechanics. Psychic types, for instance, were almost unstoppable in the first generation due to a lack of effective counters. Bug and ghost types, which should have been strong against Psychic, were either weak in stats or had no effective moves to exploit the advantage. This imbalance made Pokémon like Alakazam, Mewtwo, and Exeggutor some of the most powerful in the game. Alakazam's combination of high speed and special attack, paired with moves like Psychic and Recover, made it nearly invincible in one-on-one battles. Mewtwo, with its overwhelming stats and diverse move pool, was banned from most competitive formats, a decision that acknowledged its dominance. The physical and special split that would come in later generations didn't exist in Kanto's original games. Instead, whether a move was physical or special was determined by its type, not the move itself. This meant that fire, water, grass, electric, ice, and psychic moves were all special, while fighting, ground, rock, bug, ghost, poison, normal, and flying moves were physical. This system created odd situations where Pokemon like Gyarados, despite having high attack stats, were better off using special moves due to their typing. The critical hit mechanic in the first generation was based on speed rather than a flat percentage chance, meaning faster Pokemon like Tauros and Jolteon could score critical hits far more often than slower Pokemon. This quirk made speed one of the most important stats in competitive battling, as it determined not only who attacked first, but also who landed more critical hits. Tauros, in particular, became one of the most dominant Pokemon in the first generation's metagame due to its high speed, access to powerful moves like Body Slam and Hyper Beam, and the ability to score frequent critical hits. The move Hyper Beam, which normally required a turn to recharge after use, had a glitch in the first generation where the recharge turn could be skipped if the move knocked out the opponent's Pokemon. This glitch made Hyper Beam one of the most spammable and powerful moves in competitive play, and Pokemon that could learn it, like Tauros and Snorlax, benefited immensely. Status conditions played a crucial role in competitive battling, with moves like Thunder Wave, Sleep Powder, and Toxic being used to cripple opponents. Sleep, in particular, was overpowered in the first generation, as sleeping Pokemon couldn't wake up on the same turn they were put to sleep, effectively giving the opponent multiple free turns. This made moves like Sing and Hypnosis highly valued, and Pokemon like Jinx and Exeggutor, which could use these moves while also dealing significant damage, became staples of competitive teams. Paralysis, inflicted by moves like Thunder Wave and Body Slam, not only reduced the target's speed, but also had a 25% chance of preventing the Pokemon from attacking each turn. This made paralysis one of the most reliable ways to gain an advantage in battle, and Pokemon that could spread paralysis while also fulfilling other roles, like Zapdos and Starmie, were highly valued. Toxic, a move that inflicted poison damage that increased each turn, was one of the most effective ways to wear down bulky Pokemon. When combined with the move Leech Seed, which drained HP each turn, Toxic could turn battles into wars of attrition. Pokemon like Venusaur and Exeggutor, which could use both moves, became known for their ability to stall out opponents. Freeze was perhaps the most devastating status condition in the first generation, as frozen Pokemon could not thaw out on their own and remained frozen until hit by a fire-type move. This made freeze moves like Blizzard and Ice Beam extremely powerful, and Pokemon that could use these moves, like Articuno and Lapras, became valuable for their ability to potentially remove an opponent's Pokemon from the battle entirely. The item system in Kanto's competitive scene was limited compared to later generations. Held items didn't exist in the first generation, meaning Pokemon could not carry berries, choice items, or any other held item during battle. This simplified the metagame, but also removed a layer of strategy that would be added in Gold and Silver. Evasion-boosting moves like Double Team and Minimize were not banned in the first generation, leading to strategies where players would stack evasion boosts to make their Pokemon nearly impossible to hit. This tactic, while frustrating, was a legitimate strategy that saw use in competitive play until later generations introduced clauses to ban evasion-based strategies. The move Wrap, along with other binding moves like Fire Spin and Clamp, had a glitch in the first generation where they prevented the opponent from attacking for multiple turns if they successfully hit. This made Pokemon like Dragonite, which could use Wrap with high accuracy, extremely annoying to face, as they could effectively lock down an opponent's Pokemon until it fainted. Stat-boosting moves like Swords Dance and Amnesia were incredibly powerful in the first generation, as there were few ways to remove stat boosts. A Pokémon that successfully set up multiple boosts could sweep entire teams, making moves like these highly valued. Mewtwo, with its access to Amnesia and high special stats, became nearly unbeatable once it had set up. The lack of abilities in the first generation meant that Pokémon were defined entirely by their stats, typing, and move pool. This made the metagame more straightforward, but also less diverse, as certain Pokémon with optimal stat distributions dominated while others were left behind. The introduction of abilities in later generations would address this imbalance by giving underused Pokémon unique niches. Kanto's trading mechanics introduced social elements that became a defining feature of the franchise. Certain Pokémon, like Golem, Gengar, and Alakazam, could only be obtained by trading their pre-evolved forms. This design choice encouraged players to interact with friends, fostering a sense of community. However, it also created frustration for players who didn't have access to others to trade with, making these Pokémon feel unobtainable. Version exclusivity added another layer to trading, with certain Pokémon only appearing in red or blue. Ikens, Oddish, Mankey, and Growlithe were exclusive to red, while Sandshrew, Bellsprout, Meowth, and Vulpix were exclusive to blue. This decision incentivized players to own both versions or trade with friends, a strategy that increased sales and engagement. The concept of trading went beyond just filling the Pokédex. It became a social experience, with players gathering in schoolyards and community centers to trade and battle. This face-to-face interaction created memories that many fans still cherish, and it established trading as a core pillar of the Pokémon experience. The global trade system, which would be introduced in later generations, streamlined trading and made it accessible to a wider audience, but it also removed some of the personal connection that came with trading in person. For many fans, the link cable used to connect two Game Boys remains a symbol of Pokémon's social legacy. Glitches and exploits became part of Kanto's identity, with players discovering ways to break the game that were never intended by the developers. The Missing No glitch, caused by performing a specific sequence of actions involving the Old Man in Viridian City and the coast of Cinnabar Island, allowed players to encounter a glitched Pokémon that could duplicate items in the 6th slot of their bag. This glitch became legendary among players, with many using it to obtain infinite rare candies, master balls, or other valuable items. While Missing No itself was a glitched entity with bizarre stats and appearance, encountering it didn't usually corrupt save files, though it could cause graphical glitches. The Mew glitch, discovered years after the game's release, allowed players to encounter Mew through a carefully timed sequence of actions involving specific trainers and the fly move. This glitch was never intended by the developers, but it gave players a way to obtain Mew without attending official events. The discovery of this glitch reignited interest in the original games and demonstrated the depth of Kanto's code. Other glitches, like the item duplication glitch and the experience underflow glitch, allowed players to manipulate the game in ways that trivialized certain challenges. While these exploits were never part of the intended experience, they became part of Kanto's folklore, with players sharing strategies and discoveries through online forums and playground conversations. The developers' decision to leave many of these glitches unfixed in later re-releases, such as the Virtual Console versions, suggests an acknowledgement of their place in Pokémon history. Kanto's music, composed by Junichi Masuda, became one of the most iconic soundtracks in gaming. Each town, route, and dungeon had its own theme, creating an auditory landscape that complemented the visual design. The Pallet Town theme, simple and nostalgic, set the tone for the player's departure from home. Its gentle melody became synonymous with beginnings, and many players still feel emotional when hearing it. The Viridian Forest theme, with its upbeat tempo and sense of adventure, captured the excitement of exploring a new area. The Lavender Town theme, as discussed earlier, used dissonant tones to evoke sadness and unease, a stark contrast to the rest of the soundtrack. This willingness to use music to evoke specific emotions set a precedent for how soundtracks could enhance storytelling in games. The Pokémon Center theme, with its calming and reassuring melody, became a safe haven in musical form. Players associated this theme with healing and safety, and its consistency across the series has made it one of the most enduring pieces of music in Pokémon. The gym battle theme, intense and driving, communicated the stakes of each challenge, while the trainer battle theme, slightly less intense, still conveyed excitement. The champion battle theme, reserved for the final fight against the player's rival, was the climax of Kanto's musical journey. Its triumphant and urgent melody captured the emotion of the moment, and defeating the rival while this music played felt like the culmination of everything the player had worked toward. The surfing theme, lighthearted and bouncy, turned traversing water routes into a pleasant experience rather than a chore. The cave theme, ominous and echoing, made dungeons feel dangerous and mysterious. The Team Rocket theme, sneaky and mischievous, perfectly captured the organization's role as antagonists. Each of these themes contributed to Kanto's atmosphere, and together they created a cohesive auditory identity that players remembered decades later. Kanto's influence on popular culture extended far beyond the games themselves. The anime, which began airing in Japan in 1997 and worldwide in 1998, introduced Kanto to millions of viewers who had never played the games. The anime's portrayal of Kanto, while taking creative liberties, stayed true to the region's core identity, with locations like Pewter City, Cerulean City, and Lavender Town appearing in episodes. The trading card game, launched in 1996 in Japan and 1998 internationally, brought Kanto's Pokémon into a new medium. The original base set featured many of Kanto's most iconic Pokémon, with Charizard becoming one of the most valuable and sought-after cards. The card game's success demonstrated that Pokémon could thrive in multiple formats, not just video games. Merchandise, from plush toys to clothing, brought Kanto's Pokémon into everyday life. Pikachu, in particular, became a ubiquitous presence, appearing on everything from backpacks to lunchboxes. This merchandising blitz turned Pokémon into a lifestyle brand, and Kanto's creatures became symbols recognized worldwide. The first Pokémon movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, released in 1998 in Japan and 1999 internationally, explored themes introduced in Kanto's games. The movie's focus on Mewtwo's origin and its questioning of identity resonated with audiences, and its emotional climax, where Ash is turned to stone and revived by the tears of Pokémon, became one of the most memorable moments in the franchise. The movie's success cemented Pokémon as a cultural juggernaut and proved that Kanto's stories could translate to the big screen. Kanto's legacy is also preserved through remakes and re-releases. Fire Red and Leaf Green, released for the Game Boy Advance in 2004, updated Kanto's graphics, mechanics, and story while staying faithful to the original experience. These remakes introduced features from later generations, like abilities and held items, while preserving the core journey that made the original games beloved. Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, released for the Nintendo Switch in 2018, reimagined Kanto with modern graphics and mechanics inspired by Pokémon Go. These games introduced motion, controls for catching Pokémon, and removed random encounters, creating a more accessible experience for new players while still honoring the original journey. The decision to revisit Kanto in Gold and Silver's postgame was one of the most ambitious design choices in the series' history. After completing Johto's story, players could travel to Kanto and explore the region 3 years after the events of Red and Blue. This version of Kanto showed how the region had changed over time, with some towns expanded and others remaining the same. The final battle against Red, the protagonist of the original games, on Mont Silver was a perfect ending to Johto's story and a love letter to Kanto. Red's team, consisting of high-level Pokémon, including Pikachu, represented the player's journey in the original games, and defeating him felt like surpassing a legend. Kanto's myths and urban legends added layers of mystery that extended beyond the official content. The Mew under the truck myth, which claimed that a Mew could be found near the SS Anne by using surf and strength to move a truck, was entirely false, but became one of the most enduring legends in gaming. Players spent hours trying to access this truck, creating elaborate theories about how to move it or what conditions needed to be met. The myth persisted for years, fueled by playground rumors and early internet forums, and it exemplified the way players engaged with Kanto's world, constantly searching for secrets that may or may not exist. The Lavender Town Syndrome, a creepypasta that claimed the town's music caused illness or death in players, was entirely fabricated but gained traction due to the unsettling nature of the town's theme. This urban legend, while false, highlighted the cultural impact of Lavender Town and the way its atmosphere resonated with players. The ghost stories surrounding the Pokémon Tower, including claims of hidden messages or cursed sprites, were part of a broader trend of players finding or inventing mysteries within Kanto's code. These myths, whether true or false, became part of the region's identity, adding a layer of folklore that enriched the experience. Kanto's design philosophy, focused on exploration, discovery, and connection, became the blueprint for every Pokémon region that followed. The structure of towns, routes, gyms, and a final challenge at the Pokémon League was established in Kanto and has remained consistent across every generation. While later regions introduced variations, like contests, trials, or open-world mechanics, the core journey traces back to Kanto. The creatures introduced in Kanto set archetypes that persist to this day. The elemental starters, the 3-stage evolution lines, the legendary bird trio, the pseudo-legendary dragon line, the ultimate legendary, and the hidden mythical Pokémon are all templates that originated in Kanto and have been revisited in every generation since. Kanto's influence on competitive battling, while rough in execution, laid the groundwork for the complex strategies and metagames that define modern Pokémon. The concepts of type advantages, stat optimization, and strategic move selection all began here, and the franchise has spent decades refining and expanding on these foundations. The social aspects of Kanto, from trading to battling with friends, established Pokémon as a communal experience. This emphasis on connection, both between players and their Pokémon, became a defining feature of the franchise and remains central to its identity. Kanto's cultural impact cannot be overstated. It introduced the world to Pokémon, a franchise that has since become the highest-grossing media franchise of all time. From the games to the anime, from the trading card game to merchandise, from movies to music, Kanto's influence touches every aspect of the Pokémon empire. For fans who began their journey in Kanto, the region represents more than just a map or a collection of Pokémon. It represents childhood memories, friendships formed through trading and battling, and the joy of discovering a world that felt alive. For newer generations, Kanto serves as a historical touchstone, a way to connect with the roots of a franchise that continues to evolve. Kanto's enduring appeal lies in its simplicity and its depth. On the surface, it is a straightforward adventure, one boy or girl leaving home to become a Pokémon champion. But beneath that surface are layers of design, storytelling, and cultural significance that reveal themselves the more deeply one engages with the region. As we drift deeper into Kanto's legacy, it becomes clear that the region is not just the beginning of Pokémon, but its foundation. Every innovation, every creature, every design choice in later generations can trace its lineage back to decisions made during Kanto's development. The region's influence is not limited to what came after, but is embedded in the very DNA of the franchise. Kanto's Pokémon have become icons, recognizable to people who have never played the games. Pikachu's status as a global mascot, Charizard's near-mythic reputation, Mewtwo's complex backstory, and Eevee's endless potential are all legacies of Kanto's design. These creatures transcended the games and became symbols in their own right, representing different aspects of the Pokémon experience. The region's towns and landmarks have become synonymous with specific moments in the player's journey. Pallet Town represents the beginning, Viridian Forest, the first steps into the unknown. Lavender Town, the confrontation with loss, sylph-combing, the fight against corruption, and Indigo Plateau, the culmination of effort and growth. Each location carries emotional weight, and together they form a narrative arc that has resonated with players for decades. Kanto's music, as mentioned earlier, became an integral part of its identity. The melodies composed by Junichi Masuda are so iconic that they have been remixed, reorchestrated, and referenced in countless forms. Hearing the Pallet Town theme, or the battle music, decades after first playing the games, can evoke powerful nostalgia, a testament to the lasting impact of the soundtrack. The myths and legends that grew around Kanto, from Missing No to the Mew glitch to the truck near the SS Anne, became part of the region's culture. These stories, shared through word of mouth and early internet forums, created a sense of community among players who were all searching for the same secrets. The fact that some of these myths were false didn't diminish their impact. It enhanced the mystique of Kanto as a place where anything seemed possible. Kanto's design, constrained by the limitations of the Game Boy, forced the developers to be creative and efficient. Every sprite, every sound, every piece of dialogue had to serve a purpose, and this economy of design resulted in a region that felt cohesive and intentional. The constraints that seemed like obstacles became strengths, as they forced the team to focus on what mattered most: exploration, connection, and discovery. The decision to include 151 Pokémon in Kanto was deliberate, as the developers wanted to create a roster that felt complete without being overwhelming. Each Pokémon had a distinct design and role, and the balance between common and rare, weak and strong, simple and complex created a diverse ecosystem that rewarded different playstyles. Kanto's influence on game design extends beyond Pokémon. The structure of a world map with interconnected locations, the concept of progression through challenges tied to specific locations, and the emphasis on player choice within a guided narrative have all been adopted by other franchises. Kanto proved that a game could be both linear and open, guiding players through a story while allowing them to explore at their own pace. The emotional core of Kanto's story, the bond between trainer and Pokémon, remains the heart of the franchise. This theme, introduced in the very first games, has been explored and expanded in every generation since. The idea that Pokémon are not just tools for battle, but partners and friends, is what separates Pokémon from other monster-collecting games. Kanto's role in the broader Pokémon narrative has evolved over the years. In the original games, it was the entire world, the only region players could explore. In Gold and Silver, it became a nostalgic return, a chance to revisit familiar places and see how they had changed. In later games and media, Kanto has been referenced, revisited, and reimagined, always serving as a touchstone for the franchise's history. The competitive scene that emerged from Kanto, while unbalanced and glitchy, demonstrated that Pokémon could be more than a single-player experience. The strategies developed by early players, the discovery of optimal team compositions, and the formation of battling communities laid the groundwork for the organized competitive scene that exists today. Kanto's Pokémon have remained relevant in competitive play across every generation. Creatures like Gengar, Alakazam, Tauros, Snorlax, and Zapdos have all had periods of dominance, and their designs have been refined through regional forms, mega evolutions, and other mechanics that keep them viable. This longevity speaks to the strength of Kanto's original designs. The remakes of Kanto's games have each introduced new audiences to the region, ensuring that it remains accessible to players who didn't grow up with the original Game Boy. Fire Red and Leaf Green brought Kanto to the Game Boy Advance generation. Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee brought it to the Switch generation, and each remake has added features and quality of life improvements while preserving the core experience. Kanto's cultural significance is reinforced by its presence in Pokémon media beyond the games. The anime's Kanto arc, spanning over 80 episodes, introduced the region to millions of viewers and established many of the characters and locations as household names. The trading card game's base set, featuring Kanto's Pokémon, remains one of the most collected and valuable sets in the game's history. The first Pokémon movie's exploration of Mewtwo's story added depth to one of Kanto's most iconic Pokémon, turning it from a powerful in-game encounter into a symbol of identity and purpose. This willingness to expand on the lore introduced in the games has become a hallmark of the franchise, with movies, anime episodes, and spin-off games all adding layers to the world established in Kanto. Kanto's enduring appeal is not just nostalgia, though nostalgia certainly plays a role. It is the region's ability to feel both specific and universal, personal and shared. Every player who has traveled through Kanto has their own memories, their own favorite Pokémon, their own moments that stand out. And yet, these individual experiences are connected by a shared journey, a common narrative that unites fans across generations. The decision to make Kanto the starting point of Pokémon was both intentional and fortunate. The region's design, its creatures, its music, and its story all came together to create something that felt magical, a world that invited players to explore, discover, and connect. This magic has endured for decades, and Kanto remains the heart of Pokémon, the place where it all began. As the franchise has grown and evolved, introducing new regions, new mechanics, and new Pokémon, Kanto has remained a constant. It is the region that players return to, whether through remakes, revisits in later games, or simply through memory. It is the standard against which every new region is measured, and it is the foundation upon which the entire franchise is built. Kanto's influence is visible in every corner of Pokémon, from the structure of the games to the design of the creatures, from the epithets, music to the myths, from the competitive scene to the cultural impact. Kanto's legacy is woven into the fabric of the franchise. It is not just the first region, it is the region that defined what Pokémon could be. For many fans, Kanto is more than a location in a video game. It is a symbol of childhood, of friendship, of discovery, of growth. It is a place where anything felt possible, where a simple adventure could become a lifelong passion. And as the Pokémon franchise continues to grow, introducing new regions and new stories, Kanto remains the place where it all began, the region that started a phenomenon that shows no signs of slowing down. The journey through Kanto, from Pallet Town to the Pokémon League, is a journey that millions of players have taken. Each step, each battle, each encounter is part of a larger story, a story about growth, connection, and the bond between trainer and Pokémon. This story, first told in Kanto, has been retold and reimagined countless times, but its core remains the same, a simple adventure that touched the hearts of players around the world. Kanto's design, constrained by the technology of its time, forced the developers to focus on what mattered most. The result was a region that felt complete, cohesive, and alive, a world that invited players to explore and discover at their own pace. The simplicity of Kanto's design, far from being a limitation, became one of its greatest strengths. The creatures of Kanto, from the smallest Caterpie to the most powerful Mewtwo, became icons. Each Pokémon had a distinct design, a distinct role, and a distinct place in the ecosystem. The balance between common and rare, weak and strong, created a world that felt diverse and dynamic, a world where every Pokémon had value. The music of Kanto, composed under the constraints of the Game Boy's sound chip, became one of the most iconic soundtracks in gaming. Each town, each route, each battle had its own theme, creating an auditory landscape that complemented the visual design. The melodies of Kanto are so ingrained in the minds of players that hearing them decades later can evoke powerful emotions. The myths and legends of Kanto, from the truck near the SS Anne to the ghost of Lavender Town, became part of the region's identity. These stories, shared through word of mouth and early internet forums, created a sense of community among players. The fact that many of these myths were false didn't matter. They added to the mystique of Kanto as a place where secrets were waiting to be discovered. Kanto's influence on game design, on popular culture, on the Pokémon franchise itself, cannot be overstated. It is the region that started it all, the place where the journey began. And as the franchise continues to evolve, introducing new regions, new mechanics, and new stories, Kanto remains the foundation, the touchstone, the place that every player returns to, whether in game or in memory. The legacy of Kanto is not just in the games, the anime, the movies, or the merchandise. It is in the memories of the players who explored its routes, battled its gym leaders, and caught its Pokémon. It is in the friendships formed through trading and battling, in the excitement of discovering a new area, in the joy of watching a Pokémon evolve. Kanto's legacy is personal and universal, specific and shared, a reminder that sometimes the simplest stories are the ones that endure. As we drift toward the end of this journey through Kanto, it becomes clear that the region is more than a collection of towns, routes, and Pokémon. It is a world that felt alive, a world that invited players to become part of its story. The decision to create Kanto, to design its creatures, to compose its music, to hide its secrets, was the decision that sparked a cultural phenomenon. Kanto is the region where it all began, and it remains the region that defines what Pokémon is. It is the standard, the foundation, the heart of the franchise. And as long as there are players who remember their first steps into Viridian Forest, their first gym battle against Brock, their first encounter with a legendary Pokémon, Kanto will remain alive, a world that exists not just on a screen, but in the hearts and minds of millions of players around the world. The simplicity of Kanto's story, one boy or girl leaving home to become a champion, belies the depth of its impact. This journey, repeated by millions of players across decades, has become a shared cultural experience. The emotions evoked by Kanto, the excitement, the nostalgia, the sense of wonder, are emotions that transcend the game itself and speak to something deeper, the desire to explore, to discover, to connect. Kanto's Pokémon, its towns, its music, its myths, all come together to create a world that feels complete. A world that, despite the limitations of the hardware it was created on, felt alive and vibrant. A world that invited players to become part of its story, to forge their own path, to create their own memories. And it is these memories, these personal experiences, that give Kanto its enduring power. Every player who has traveled through Kanto has their own story, their own favorite Pokemon, their own moments that stand out. And yet, all of these individual stories are part of a larger narrative, a narrative about growth, connection, and the bond between trainer and Pokemon. Kanto is the beginning of Pokemon, but it is also the foundation upon which everything else is built. Every region that followed, every mechanic that was introduced, every creature that was designed, all of it traces back to decisions made during Kanto's development. The influence of Kanto is not limited to what came after. It is embedded in the very DNA of the franchise. As the Pokemon franchise continues to grow and evolve, Kanto remains a constant. It is the region that players return to, whether through remakes, revisits in later games, or simply through memory. It is the place where the journey began, and it is the place that will always hold a special place in the hearts of fans. The legacy of Kanto is not just in its design, its creatures, or its music. It is in the impact it had on the players who explored it, the memories it created, and the connections it fostered. Kanto is more than a region in a video game. It is a symbol of childhood, of friendship, of discovery, of growth. It is a world that felt alive, a world that invited players to become part of its story, a world that will continue to inspire and captivate players for generations to come. The route system in Kanto was designed with intentionality that often goes unnoticed by players focused solely on reaching the next town. Each route had its own ecosystem of wild Pokemon, trainers, and hidden items that rewarded thorough exploration. Route 1, connecting Pallet Town to Viridian City, served as the gentlest introduction to tall grass and random encounters, with Pidgey and Rattata being the only wild Pokemon available. This simplicity was deliberate, ensuring that players wouldn't be overwhelmed by choices in their first moments of gameplay. The route's short length also meant that players could quickly reach Viridian City to stock up on Pokeballs before returning to catch their first Pokemon. Route 2, split into northern and southern sections by Viridian Forest, introduced slightly more variety with the addition of Caterpie and Weedle in the grass. The northern section, accessible only after obtaining HM01 cut, contained trainers with higher level Pokemon, creating a natural progression loop where players could return to earlier areas with new abilities and face new challenges. This design philosophy, where areas became more rewarding upon revisiting them, encouraged players to think of Kanto as a living world rather than a linear path. Route 3, connecting Mont Moon to Pewter City, was filled with trainers using Bug-type and Normal-type Pokemon, preparing players for the challenges ahead. The route's placement just before Mont Moon served as a final training ground, allowing players to level their teams before entering the mountain. Route 4, located on the western side of Mont Moon, was notable for containing a Pokemon Center nestled between challenging routes. This placement provided a safe haven for players who had just emerged from the mountain's darkness, and its proximity to Cerulean City made it a strategic rest stop. Route 5, connecting Cerulean City to Saffron City, was initially blocked by the Thirsty Guard, creating a sense of inaccessibility that would later be resolved. Once opened, the route contained an underground path that bypassed the need to navigate through trainers, a quality of life feature that gave players choice in how they progressed. Route 6, connecting Saffron City to Vermilion City, mirrored Route 5 in its design, with another underground path providing an alternative route. The trainers here used a mix of bug and grass types, and the route's placement between two major cities made it feel like a transitional space rather than a destination. Route 7, connecting Saffron City to Celadon City, contained trainers with diverse teams that tested the player's adaptability. The route's short length belied its importance, as it served as one of the main arteries connecting Kanto's central cities. Route 8, extending east from Saffron City toward Lavender Town, contained another underground path and introduced trainers with psychic-type Pokémon, foreshadowing the challenges waiting in Sabrina's gym. The route's placement near Lavender Town created a tonal shift, with the cheerful overworld music gradually giving way to the somber tones of the town. Route 9, connecting Cerulean City to the Rock Tunnel, was filled with trainers and wild Pokémon that required careful resource management. The route's length and difficulty served as a preparation for the tunnel ahead, and its placement on an elevated ledge gave it a sense of verticality that contrasted with the flatter routes of early Kanto. Route 10, split into northern and southern sections by the Rock Tunnel, contained the power plant entrance in its northern section. This placement rewarded players who explored thoroughly, as the power plant was entirely optional but contained one of Kanto's legendary birds. The southern section, connecting the Rock Tunnel to Lavender Town, was shorter but still contained trainers and wild Pokémon that tested the player's post-tunnel strength. Route 11, extending east from Vermilion City, was notable for its length and the variety of trainers encountered along the way. The route's placement near Diglett's Cave provided a shortcut for players who had discovered the cave's entrance, creating a sense of interconnectedness. Route 12, extending south from Lavender Town, was one of the longest routes in Kanto, filled with fishermen and trainers using water-type Pokémon. The route's coastal setting and Snorlax blocking the path created a memorable obstacle that required the Pokéflute to overcome. Route 13, connecting Route 12 to Route 14, continued the coastal theme with more trainers and wild Pokémon suited to the seaside environment. The route's placement between Lavender Town and Fuchsia City made it feel like part of a longer journey, and its trainers used teams that reflected the transition from eastern to southern Kanto. Route 14, extending further south toward Fuchsia City, contained trainers with increasingly powerful Pokémon, signaling that the player was approaching one of Kanto's later challenges. The route's length and difficulty made reaching Fuchsia City feel earned, and its placement near the Safari Zone created anticipation for the unique area ahead. Route 15, connecting Fuchsia City to Route 14, was shorter but still contained trainers and wild Pokémon that maintained the challenge level. The route's placement near the coast gave it a similar aesthetic to the routes that preceded it. Route 16, extending west from Celadon City, contained a house where players could receive HM02 Fly from a girl after clearing the path. This house, nestled near the route's entrance, was easy to miss, but provided one of the most useful field moves in the game. The route's western section led to a cycling road that bypassed much of the area, creating another choice for players who wanted to avoid trainer battles. Route 17, the cycling road connecting Celadon City to Fuchsia City, was one of the most unique routes in Kanto. Its design, a long downhill slope filled with trainers on bikes, created a sense of momentum and speed that contrasted with the slower pace of other routes. The inability to walk on this route, requiring the player to use the bicycle, made it feel like a distinct experience within Kanto's world. Route 18, connecting Fuchsia City to the cycling road, was a short route that served as an exit point for players who had completed the downhill ride. The route's placement near Fuchsia City made it feel like a conclusion to the cycling road experience. Route 19, extending south from Fuchsia City, was entirely water-based, requiring surf to navigate. The route's wild Pokémon primarily Tentacool and Tentacruel, became infamous among players due to their high encounter rate. The route's placement between Fuchsia City and the Seafoam Islands made it a transitional space, and its length reinforced the isolation of Cinnabar Island. Route 20, continuing south from Route 19, passed through the Seafoam Islands and required players to navigate the dungeon or surf around it. The route's coastal setting and the presence of strong wild Pokémon made it one of the more challenging water routes in Kanto. Its connection to Cinnabar Island created a sense of arrival as players finally reached the mysterious island after a long journey. Route 21, a short water route connecting Cinnabar Island to Pallet Town, served as a circular route that allowed players to return home after completing the island's challenges. The route's brevity and proximity to Pallet Town made it feel like a homecoming, and its placement created a sense of full-circle progression. Route 22, extending west from Viridian City towards the Pokémon League, was accessible early but contained high-level wild Pokémon and the player's rival with a fully trained team. This design choice taught players that not all areas were meant to be explored immediately, and revisiting the route later became a rite of passage. Route 23, continuing west from Route 22 toward Victory Road, required all 8 gym badges to pass through the gate. This requirement created a sense of accomplishment, as reaching the route meant the player had completed Kanto's gym challenge. The route's trainers used powerful Pokémon, and the wild encounters here were among the strongest outside of Victory Road itself. Another quiet detail appears when we look closer at Kanto's towns and their designs. Each town had a distinct identity shaped by its layout, architecture, and the characters who inhabited it. Pallet Town's simplicity, with only 3 accessible buildings, created a sense of intimacy that made leaving home to feel significant. The town's name, referencing a blank canvas, symbolized the player's journey as a story waiting to be written. Viridian City, the first town most players encountered after leaving Pallet, introduced the concept of shops and Pokémon centers as recurring features. The city's gym, locked until later in the game, created a sense of anticipation and mystery. The old man blocking the path to Route 2 until the player had a Pokémon served as a gentle tutorial, teaching players that progression required meeting certain conditions. Pewter City's museum, often overlooked in the rush to challenge Brock, contained lore about ancient Pokémon and fossils that foreshadowed later game mechanics. The museum's entrance fee, a small sum of 50 Pokédollars, made it accessible to all players, but still required a conscious decision to enter. The exhibits inside, while simple, added depth to Kanto's world by hinting at a history that predated the player's journey. Cerulean City's cave, accessible only after obtaining Surf and defeating the Elite Four, became one of the most anticipated locations in the late game. The cave's entrance, visible but inaccessible for most of the journey, created a sense of mystery that was only resolved in the post-game. The decision to place Mewtwo in this cave, rather than tying it to a story event, made discovering it feel like uncovering a secret. Vermilion City's port, with the SS Anne docked at its pier, introduced the concept of temporary locations that could disappear. The ship's departure, after the player obtained HM01 cut, created a sense of urgency and permanence, teaching players that some opportunities were time-sensitive. This design choice, while frustrating for players who missed items on the ship, added weight to the idea that Kanto was a living world where time moved forward. Lavender Town's Pokémon Tower, a 7-story graveyard for deceased Pokémon, introduced themes of loss and mourning that were rare in games of the era. The tower's design, with its spiraling staircase and haunted atmosphere, made it one of the most memorable dungeons in Kanto. The decision to fill the tower with ghost-type Pokémon that couldn't be caught without the Sylph Scope added a layer of challenge that required progression in other areas. Celadon City's department store, spanning multiple floors with different types of items on each, introduced the concept of specialized shopping that would become a staple of the series. The store's rooftop vending machines, which sold drinks that could be traded to NPCs for TMs, rewarded players who explored every floor. The city's game corner, with its slot machines and prize exchange, added an optional gambling element that was later removed or altered in international releases due to regulatory concerns. Fuchsia City's Safari Zone, a sprawling area with different zones containing different Pokémon, introduced a minigame that replaced traditional catching mechanics with a bait and rock system. The zone's step limit, forcing players to leave after a certain number of steps, added tension and strategy to exploration. The reward for finding the secret house deep within the zone, HM03 Surf, made the Safari Zone a required stop rather than an optional diversion. Saffron City's layout, with its multiple major buildings and central location, made it feel like Kanto's capital. The city's initial inaccessibility, blocked by thirsty guards, created anticipation and made entering the city feel like crossing a threshold. The Fighting Dojo, located near Sabrina's gym, offered an alternative challenge and a choice between two Pokémon that couldn't be obtained elsewhere. Cinnabar Island's mansion, filled with journal entries and broken machinery, told the story of scientific experiments that created Mewtwo. The mansion's layout, with its locked doors requiring statue puzzles to open, made it one of the most intricate dungeons in Kanto. The journal entries, written in fragments across multiple floors, required players to piece together the story themselves, creating a sense of discovery that rewarded careful reading. Indigo Plateau, the final location in Kanto, served as the entrance to the Pokémon League and the culmination of the player's journey. The building's design, with its Pokémon Center and shop providing final preparation opportunities, made it feel like a staging area for the ultimate challenge. The decision to place the Elite Four and Champion battles in a separate building, accessible only after passing through Victory Road, created a sense of finality and importance. Kanto's dungeons, from Viridian Forest to Victory Road, each served a specific purpose in the player's progression. Viridian Forest introduced the concept of mazes filled with trainers and wild Pokémon, teaching players to navigate environments more complex than open routes. Mint Moon, with its multiple floors and branching paths, required careful mapping and resource management, preparing players for later challenges. Rock Tunnel's darkness, forcing players to use HM05 Flash or navigate blind, introduced the concept of environmental hazards that could be overcome with the right tools. The tunnel's layout, with its winding paths and frequent dead ends, made it one of the most frustrating yet memorable dungeons in Kanto. The decision to place strong trainers and wild Pokémon throughout the tunnel ensured that reaching the other side felt like an accomplishment. The power plant, hidden off Route 10, rewarded exploration with access to electric-type Pokémon and the legendary bird Zapdos. The plant's design, resembling an abandoned industrial facility, gave it an eerie atmosphere that contrasted with Kanto's natural areas. The wild Voltorb and Electrode, which could explode and end battles prematurely, added an element of danger that made every encounter tense. Seafoam Islands, with their boulder puzzles and slippery ice floors, required both strategy and careful movement to navigate. The island's layout, spanning multiple floors with currents that could push the player off course, made them one of the most complex dungeons in Kanto. The reward for completing the puzzles, access to Articuno, made the effort feel worthwhile. Victory Road, the final dungeon before the Pokémon League, combined every challenge the player had faced throughout their journey. The dungeon's boulder puzzles required strength, its dark areas required flash, its water sections required surf, and its rocky terrain tested the player's navigation skills. The decision to place the strongest trainers and wild Pokémon here created a final gauntlet that ensured only prepared players reached the Elite Four. As we drift a little deeper into the mechanics that defined Kanto, it becomes clear that the region's design was shaped by both ambition and constraint. The developers, working with the limited hardware of the Game Boy, had to make creative choices that defined not just Kanto, but the entire franchise. The decision to use a linked team of programmers, artists, and composers ensured that every aspect of the game felt cohesive, even when technical limitations forced compromises. The battle system, while simple compared to later generations, established the foundation for every Pokémon game that followed. The turn-based combat, where players selected moves for their Pokémon and battled against trainers or wild Pokémon, was intuitive enough for children, but deep enough to support competitive play. The decision to limit each Pokémon to 4 moves, a constraint that continues to this day, forced players to make strategic choices about which moves to keep and which to forget. The type system, with its strengths and weaknesses creating a web of interactions, was one of Kanto's most enduring innovations. The original 15 types, normal, fire, water, electric, grass, ice, fighting, poison, ground, flying, psychic, bug, rock, ghost, and dragon, each had distinct characteristics that influenced both battle strategy and team composition. The decision to make certain types stronger or weaker against others created a metagame where understanding type matchups was essential for success. The experience system, where Pokémon gained levels through battling and evolved at specific thresholds, created a sense of progression that kept players engaged. The decision to tie evolution to levels, rather than random chance or external factors, gave players control over their team's development and created anticipation for specific milestones. The moment when a Pokémon began to glow and transform became one of the most iconic animations in gaming. The catching mechanic, where players weakened wild Pokémon and threw Pokéballs to capture them, introduced a risk-reward dynamic that balanced challenge with accessibility. The variety of Pokéballs, from the basic Pokéball to the specialized Great Ball, Ultra Ball, and Master Ball, gave players tools suited to different situations. The decision to make certain Pokémon easier or harder to catch based on their catch rate ensured that legendary Pokémon felt appropriately rare and valuable. The item system, while limited compared to later generations, introduced consumables and held items that added depth to gameplay. Potions, revives, antidotes, and other healing items became essential resources, teaching players to manage their inventory carefully. The decision to include held items like evolutionary stones, which could trigger evolution for certain Pokémon, added another layer of strategy to team building. The HM system, where certain moves could be used outside of battle to overcome obstacles, created a sense of progression tied to exploration. Cut, fly, surf, strength, and flash each opened new areas or provided shortcuts, encouraging players to revisit earlier locations with new abilities. The decision to make HMs permanent, unable to be forgotten without visiting a specific NPC, added weight to the choice of which Pokémon would learn these moves. The Pokémon storage system, managed by Bill's PC, allowed players to catch more than the 6 Pokémon they could carry in their party. This system, which became more sophisticated in later generations, ensured that players could collect all 151 Pokémon without being limited by party size. The decision to introduce Bill as the character who developed this system gave it a narrative justification and made the technology feel like part of Kanto's world. The Pokédex, given to the player by Professor Oak at the start of the journey, served as both a gameplay tool and a narrative device. The Pokédex entries, which provided descriptions and data for each Pokémon, added lore that expanded the world beyond what was shown on screen. The decision to make completing the Pokédex a post-game goal gave players a reason to continue exploring Kanto after becoming champion. The rival system, where the player's childhood friend became a recurring antagonist, created a personal stake in the journey. The rival's team, which evolved and grew stronger alongside the players, mirrored the player's progression and made each encounter feel significant. The decision to make the rival the final champion created a narrative climax that elevated the story beyond a simple collect and battle structure. The gym system, where 8 gym leaders, each specializing in a different type, had to be defeated to qualify for the Pokémon League, provided structure to the player's journey. Each gym introduced a unique puzzle or challenge that tested more than just battling skills, from Brock's rock-type fortress to Blaine's trivia questions. The decision to award TMs as prizes for defeating gym leaders ensured that each victory felt rewarding beyond just the badge. The Elite Four system, where 4 powerful trainers had to be defeated in succession without the ability to leave and heal, created a final challenge that required careful preparation. The decision to theme each Elite Four member around a specific type, Ice, Fighting, Ghost, and Dragon, ensured that balanced teams had an advantage over specialized ones. The reveal that the champion was the player's rival added emotional weight to the final battle. The legendary Pokémon system, where rare and powerful creatures could be found in hidden locations, created moments of discovery that felt earned. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, the 3 legendary birds, were each tied to specific dungeons that required exploration to find. Mewtwo, hidden in Cerulean Cave, required completing the entire game before it could be encountered, making it the ultimate post-game prize. Mew, the mythical Pokémon that was only available through official events or glitches, became one of the most sought-after creatures in Kanto. The decision to make Mew unobtainable through normal gameplay created a sense of mystery and exclusivity that has persisted throughout the franchise. The glitch that allowed players to encounter Mew, discovered years after the game's release, demonstrated the depth of Kanto's code and the community's dedication to uncovering its secrets. The trading system, which required a link cable connecting 2 Game Boys, transformed Pokémon from a single-player experience into a social phenomenon. The decision to make certain Pokémon, like Golem, Gengar, and Alakazam, only obtainable through trading, ensured that players interacted with each other. The version exclusives, where certain Pokémon only appeared in red or blue, further incentivized trading and created a sense of community. The battling system, which allowed 2 players to connect their Game Boys and compete, introduced competitive play that would eventually evolve into organized tournaments. The decision to allow players to battle with their in-game teams rather than standardized rosters meant that every battle reflected the unique choices each player had made. This personal connection to teams made victories more meaningful and losses more motivating. Kanto's NPCs, while limited by the Game Boy's memory, each served a purpose in the world's design. Trainers scattered across routes and dungeons provided both challenges and rewards, with their dialogue hinting at lore or providing tips. Gym leaders, while primarily serving as bosses, had personalities reflected in their designs and battle styles. Elite Four members, with their specialized teams and dramatic battle arenas, felt like legendary figures within Kanto's world. Professor Oak, the Pokémon researcher who gave the player their first Pokémon and Pokédex, served as both a mentor and a narrative anchor. His grandson, the player's rival, created a personal connection to Oak that added emotional stakes to the rivalry. The decision to have Oak evaluate the player's Pokédex progress throughout the game reinforced the goal of catching all 151 Pokémon. Bill, the Pokémon researcher who developed the storage system, introduced the concept of scientists working to improve technology within the Pokémon world. His house on Route 25, where players helped him return to human form after a teleporter accident, added a humorous side quest that broke from the main narrative. The reward for helping Bill, access to the SSN, tied this side quest into the larger story. Mr. Fuji, the kind old man in Lavender Town who cared for abandoned Pokémon, represented compassion and healing in a town defined by loss. His rescue from Team Rocket in Pokémon Tower created a quest that tied into the game's darker themes. The reward for saving him, the Pokéflute, became one of the most important items in the game, required to wake the Snorlax, blocking routes and access new areas. Team Rocket, the villainous organization causing trouble across Kanto, served as both antagonists and comic relief. Their grunts, encountered throughout the player's journey, provided context for the larger conflict between criminal ambition and the values represented by Pokémon trainers. Giovanni, revealed as both Team Rocket's leader and Viridian City's gym leader, created a narrative twist that elevated the story's stakes. The player character, a silent protagonist whose gender could be chosen at the start of the game, served as a blank slate for players to project themselves onto. This design choice, allowing players to feel like they were personally exploring Kanto, created a sense of ownership over the journey. The decision to make the character silent, never speaking in dialogue but communicating through actions, reinforced this connection. Kanto's day-night cycle, absent in the original games but introduced in Gold and Silver, would later become a defining feature of the series. The decision to keep Kanto's time static in Red and Blue was likely due to hardware limitations, but it created a world that felt frozen in a perpetual day. This choice, while limiting, gave Kanto a timeless quality that contributed to its enduring appeal. The weather system, also absent in the original games, would be introduced in later generations to add variety to battles and exploration. Kanto's consistent clear weather created a world that felt stable and predictable, allowing players to focus on exploration and battling without environmental distractions. This simplicity, born of necessity, became a strength that defined the region's aesthetic. The breeding system, introduced in Gold and Silver, would retroactively add depth to Kanto's Pokémon by allowing players to obtain eggs and raise Pokémon from birth. The decision to include Kanto Pokémon in the breeding mechanics ensured that these creatures remained relevant in later generations. The concept of baby Pokémon, like Pichu and Cleffa, created pre-evolutions for Kanto species that added new layers to their designs. The ability system, introduced in Ruby and Sapphire, would give each Pokémon unique traits that influenced battles. Kanto's Pokémon, when updated with abilities in later games, gained new strategic options that kept them competitive. Abilities like Blaze, Torrent, and Overgrow, which boosted the power of moves when HP was low, became signature traits of the Kanto starters. The physical special split, introduced in Diamond and Pearl, would fundamentally change how battles worked by making each move individually physical or special rather than tying it to type. This change dramatically affected Kanto's Pokémon, with creatures like Gyarados and Flareon benefiting from the ability to use physical moves of their own type. The split corrected imbalances from the original games and ensured that Kanto's Pokémon remained viable in competitive play. Mega Evolution, introduced in X and Y, would give certain Kanto Pokémon temporary powered-up forms during battle. Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, Gengar, Alakazam, and others received Mega Evolutions that not only increased their stats, but also changed their designs to reflect heightened power. The decision to include so many Kanto Pokémon in the Mega Evolution mechanic demonstrated the region's continued importance to the franchise. Regional forms, introduced in Sun and Moon, would give Kanto Pokémon alternate appearances and typings when encountered in different regions. Alolan forms of Pokémon like Raichu, Exeggutor, and Marowak added new designs and strategic options while preserving the original versions. This mechanic allowed Game Freak to revisit and reinterpret Kanto's creatures without replacing their classic designs. Gigantamax forms, introduced in Sword and Shield, would give select Pokémon from Kanto, including Pikachu, Eevee, Charizard, and Meowth, the ability to grow to massive sizes with unique moves. These forms, tied to specific events or distributions, became collectible variants that honored Kanto's legacy while adding new gameplay mechanics. Kanto's presence in spin-off games further cemented its place as the heart of the Pokémon franchise. Pokémon Snap, released for the Nintendo 64, featured locations inspired by Kanto and focused on photographing Pokémon in their natural habitats. Pokémon Stadium, also for the Nintendo 64, allowed players to battle with their Kanto teams in three-dimensional arenas, bringing the Game Boy battles to life. Pokémon Pinball, released for the Game Boy Color, featured tables themed around Kanto's regions and Pokémon, translating the catching mechanics into a pinball game. Pokémon Puzzle League, based on the anime, included characters and locations from Kanto and challenged players to solve puzzles in fast-paced matches. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, a series of dungeon crawler games, allowed players to play as Pokémon themselves, with Kanto species featuring prominently in the rosters. The game's stories often referenced Kanto's lore, including the relationship between Mew and Mewtwo, adding depth to the region's mythology. Pokémon Conquest, a tactical RPG released for the Nintendo DS, reimagined Pokémon in a feudal Japan-inspired setting, with Kanto Pokémon appearing alongside those from other regions. The game's unique take on Pokémon battles demonstrated the versatility of Kanto's designs across different genres. Pokémon Go, the mobile augmented reality game, launched with only Kanto Pokémon available, introducing the region to a global audience that included many who had never played the main series games. The game's focus on Kanto in its early months created a sense of nostalgia for longtime fans, while making the region's creatures accessible to newcomers. Detective Pikachu, both the mobile game and the live-action movie, centered around Kanto's most iconic Pokémon and brought the region's designs into the real world through cutting-edge CGI. The movie's depiction of Rhyme City, a metropolis where humans and Pokémon lived together, echoed themes from Kanto while presenting a more mature take on the franchise. Pokémon Masters X, a mobile game featuring trainers from across the series, included numerous Kanto gym leaders, Elite Four members, and other characters. The game's focus on the relationships between trainers and their Pokémon reinforced themes established in Kanto's original games. Pokémon Unite, a MOBA-style game, featured Kanto Pokémon like Pikachu, Charizard, and Gengar as playable characters, demonstrating the region's enduring popularity even in competitive team-based formats. The game's emphasis on strategy and cooperation reflected values established in Kanto's design. Kanto's influence on merchandise cannot be overstated. The Pokémon Trading Card, game's base set featuring Kanto Pokémon, became one of the most collected and valuable card sets in history. First edition Charizard cards, in particular, have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction, demonstrating the lasting value of Kanto's most iconic designs. Plush toys, figures, and collectibles featuring Kanto Pokémon have been produced continuously since the franchise's launch, with Pikachu remaining one of the most produced characters in all of merchandising. The decision to make Pikachu the franchise mascot ensured its presence on virtually every piece of Pokémon merchandise, from clothing to electronics to food packaging. The Pokémon anime's Kanto arc, spanning the original series and its various iterations, introduced the region to millions of viewers worldwide. Ash's journey through Kanto, with his Pikachu by his side and his friends Misty and Brock accompanying him, became one of the most iconic storylines in anime history. The anime's portrayal of gym battles, legendary Pokémon encounters, and the bond between trainer and Pokémon added emotional depth to the world established in the games. The Pokémon movies, beginning with Mewtwo Strikes Back, expanded on Kanto's lore and brought its creatures to the big screen. The success of these films demonstrated that Pokémon could thrive in feature-length narratives, and Kanto's characters and locations remained central to many of the early movies. Kanto's music, as mentioned earlier, became an integral part of the region's identity. The soundtrack, composed by Junichi Masuda with contributions from others, used the Game Boy's limited sound chip to create melodies that remain iconic decades later. The decision to give each location its own theme created an auditory map of Kanto that players could navigate even with their eyes closed. The battle themes, from the wild Pokémon encounter theme to the trainer battle theme to the gym leader battle theme, each conveyed the stakes and intensity of the moment. The Elite Four battle theme, with its urgent and dramatic melody, communicated that the player had reached the culmination of their journey. The champion battle theme, reserved for the final fight against the rival, was the emotional peak of Kanto's soundtrack. The victory themes, played after winning battles, created a sense of accomplishment that reinforced the player's progress. The evolution theme, with its mysterious and transformative melody, became one of the most recognizable pieces of music in gaming, forever associated with the moment when a Pokémon changes form. Kanto's influence on game design extends far beyond the Pokémon franchise. The structure of a world map, with interconnected locations, the concept of progression through challenges tied to specific areas, and the emphasis on player choice within a guided narrative have all been adopted by countless other games. Kanto proved that a game could be both linear and open, guiding players through a story while allowing them to explore at their own pace. The emotional core of Kanto's story, the bond between trainer and Pokémon, remains the heart of the franchise. This theme, introduced in the very first games, has been explored and expanded in every generation since, and it is what separates Pokémon from other monster collecting games. The idea that Pokémon are not just tools for battle, but partners and friends, is the foundation upon which the entire franchise is built. Kanto's world building, achieved through environmental storytelling and subtle details, created a region that felt lived in rather than constructed. NPCs scattered throughout towns and routes provided context about the world, from the old man who taught players how to catch Pokémon, to the scientists researching rare species, to the trainers who shared tips about nearby areas. Each interaction, while brief, contributed to the sense that Kanto was a real place with its own history and culture. The Pokémon centers, identical in every town, created a sense of consistency and safety throughout Kanto. The same nurse, the same healing machine, the same soothing music greeted players in every location, making these buildings feel like havens in an otherwise challenging world. The decision to make healing free rather than charging players reinforced the theme of community and support that ran through the games. The Pokémarts, also identical across towns, but with inventories that expanded as the player progressed, taught players about resource management without overwhelming them. The decision to gradually introduce new items, rather than making everything available immediately, created a sense of progression that paralleled the player's journey. TMs, rare and powerful moves that could only be used once, forced players to make strategic decisions about which Pokémon would learn them. The Silphco building in Saffron City, the largest structure in Kanto, represented corporate power and technological advancement. Its design, with its sterile hallways and teleporting pads, felt futuristic compared to the natural environments that dominated most of the region. The presence of Team Rocket within the building created a narrative where the player had to confront corruption within meta institutions, a surprisingly mature theme for a game aimed at children. The Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town, in contrast, represented tradition, memory, and the sacred, its design as a multi-floor graveyard where trainers could pay respects to deceased Pokémon introduced themes of mortality that were rare in games of the era. The Ghost of Marowak, unable to be defeated or captured until the player obtained the Sylph Scope, created a sense of helplessness that emphasized the tragedy of the story. The Safari Zone in Fuchsia City represented conservation and coexistence between humans and Pokémon. Its design as a protected area where Pokémon roamed freely created a contrast with the rest of Kanto, where wild Pokémon appeared randomly in tall grass. The zone's unique catching mechanics, replacing battles with bait and rocks, forced players to adapt their strategies and approach Pokémon in a different way. Cinnabar Island's lab, where fossils could be revived into ancient Pokémon, represented humanity's ability to bring extinct species back to life through technology. This concept, inspired by real-world discussions about cloning and de-extinction, added a layer of scientific speculation to Kanto's world. The choice between Omanite and Kabuto, made much earlier at Mant Moon, gained significance when players finally saw their chosen fossil brought to life. The Pokémon League building at Indigo Plateau, with its imposing architecture and elite trainers, represented the pinnacle of the Pokémon training world. The decision to separate the Elite Four battles from the rest of Kanto, placing them in a location that could only be reached after completing Victory Road, created a sense of finality and importance. The building's Pokémon Center, the last one players encountered before facing the Elite Four, became a place where final preparations were made. Kanto's hidden items, scattered throughout the region and often invisible without careful exploration, rewarded players who took the time to search every corner of the map. Nuggets, rare candies, and evolution stones hidden in plain sight taught players to trust their curiosity and not just follow the obvious path. The decision to make some items only accessible with specific HMs created loops where players revisited earlier areas with new abilities and found rewards they had missed. The item finder, obtained from one of Professor Oak's aides after catching a certain number of Pokémon, made finding hidden items easier, but still required players to actively search. This tool, while helpful, didn't remove the satisfaction of discovery. It simply made the process more efficient. The decision to tie its acquisition to Pokédex progress encouraged players to catch a variety of Pokémon rather than focusing solely on their battle team. Kanto's trainers, each with their own sprite and dialogue, created a sense of diversity within the region. Bug catchers in Viridian Forest, hikers in Rock Tunnel, fishermen on coastal routes, and bikers on the cycling road all had distinct identities that reflected their locations. The decision to give trainers personality through their designs and dialogue, even when limited by the Game Boy's memory, made encounters feel more meaningful than simple random battles. The rivals' dialogue, changing based on whether the player won or lost their most recent battle, created a sense of ongoing competition that evolved throughout the journey. His team, which varied depending on which starter the player chose, ensured that every playthrough felt slightly different. The decision to make him both an antagonist and the final champion added emotional weight to the rivalry and made defeating him feel like the culmination of a personal story. Kanto's Pokémon cries, each unique and generated by the Game Boy's sound chip, became identifying features that players could recognize even without seeing the creature. The cries, while limited by hardware, were distinctive enough that hearing a Zubat or Geodude in a cave immediately communicated what the player was about to encounter. This auditory design choice added another layer of immersion to Kanto's world. The evolution animation, with its white glow and pulsing light, became one of the most iconic visual effects in gaming. The decision to make evolution a dramatic moment, accompanied by unique music and a pause in gameplay, emphasized its importance. The option to cancel evolution by pressing B during the animation gave players control over when their Pokémon evolved, adding agency to the process. Kanto's overworld sprites, limited to a few pixels but still recognizable, demonstrated the power of simplified design. The player character, the rival, gym leaders, and NPCs all had distinct appearances that communicated their roles without needing detailed graphics. This economical approach to character design, born of necessity, created a visual language that remained effective even as the series moved to more powerful hardware. The sprite-based encounters, where walking into tall grass triggered a random battle represented by sprite animations, created a rhythm to exploration that became synonymous with Pokémon. The anticipation of each encounter, the uncertainty of what would appear, and the decision of whether to fight or flee all contributed to the tension and excitement of traveling through Kanto. The Pokéball animation, showing the ball shaking once, twice, 3 times before either capturing the Pokémon or releasing it, created suspense that turned catching into a game of chance. The sound of the ball clicking shut, signaling a successful capture, became one of the most satisfying audio cues in gaming. The decision to make stronger Pokémon harder to catch ensured that capturing legendary Pokémon felt earned rather than given. Kanto's badge system, where each gym leader awarded a badge upon defeat, created tangible markers of progression that players could track. The badges, displayed on the trainer card, served as both trophies and keys, unlocking new areas and allowing the use of certain HMs outside of battle. The decision to require all 8 badges to enter Victory Road ensured that players couldn't skip challenges and had to experience Kanto's full journey. The Pokédex completion system, where catching or seeing Pokémon filled in entries, created a metagame beyond battling. The goal of catching all 151 Pokémon gave players a reason to explore every corner of Kanto, trade with friends, and revisit areas they thought they had completed. The certificate awarded by Professor Oak for completing the Pokédex was a cosmetic reward, but it represented dedication and thoroughness that many players strived for. Kanto's post-game content, while limited compared to later generations, still provided goals for players who had become champion. Cerulean Cave, accessible only after defeating the Elite Four, contained the highest level wild Pokémon in the game and led to the encounter with Mewtwo. The decision to lock this content behind the main story created a clear division between the journey and the post-game, making the cave feel like a reward for completing Kanto's challenges. The Pokémon League rematches, where players could challenge the Elite Four again with their improved teams, provided a way to test new strategies and level up Pokémon. The decision to keep the Elite Four's teams the same, rather than scaling them up, meant that rematches felt easier, creating a sense of growth that reinforced how far the player had come since their first victory. Kanto's connection to Johto, revealed in gold and silver when players could visit Kanto, after completing the Johto storyline, created a sense of continuity that had never been attempted in gaming. The ability to return to familiar locations 3 years later, seeing how they had changed while still recognizing them, gave Kanto a dynamic quality that transcended its original static design. The battle against Red on Mont Silver, the final challenge in Gold and Silver, served as a perfect conclusion to Kanto's legacy. Red, the silent protagonist of the original games, waiting at the mountain's peak with a team of high-level Pokémon, including Pikachu, represented the player's journey in the first generation. Defeating him felt like surpassing a legend, and the battle's placement as the ultimate challenge in Gold and Silver demonstrated how central Kanto remained to the franchise's identity. Kanto's influence on fan culture has been profound and enduring. Fan art, fan fiction, ROM hacks, and community projects have all drawn from Kanto's designs, characters, and locations. The region's simplicity and iconic status make it a common starting point for creators exploring the Pokémon world. Fan-made games like Pokémon Uranium and Pokémon Reborn, while featuring original regions, often reference Kanto or include its Pokémon as a nod to the series' roots. The competitive Pokémon community, which has grown into organized tournaments with substantial prize pools, traces its origins to strategies developed in Kanto's metagame. Smogon University, one of the most influential competitive Pokémon communities, began by analyzing first-generation mechanics and has since expanded to cover every generation. The tier system, which categorizes Pokémon by power level, was developed to balance competitive play and ensure that Kanto's weaker Pokémon could still be used in lower tiers. Speedrunning, where players attempt to complete games as quickly as possible, has embraced Kanto's games as some of the most popular titles to run. Glitches like the Mew glitch, Trainer Fly, and arbitrary code execution have been discovered and refined over decades, creating speedrun categories that showcase the depth of Kanto's programming. The world record for completing Pokémon Red or Blue sits at under 2 hours, a testament to the community's dedication to optimizing every aspect of the journey. Nuzlocke Challenges, a self-imposed rule set where players must release Pokémon that faint and can only catch the first Pokémon encountered in each area, originated as a way to add difficulty and emotional stakes to Pokémon games. Kanto, with its unforgiving rival battles and limited healing opportunities, provides an ideal setting for these challenges. The emotional attachment players develop to their teams during Nuzlocke runs demonstrates the power of Kanto's design to create meaningful connections. Kanto's presence in academic discussions about game design, narrative structure, and player psychology has grown over the years. Researchers have analyzed the region's layout to understand how environmental storytelling creates immersion, studied the social aspects of trading and battling to explore multiplayer dynamics, and examined the franchise's merchandising strategies to understand how games can expand into broader media ecosystems. The concept of nostalgia, particularly as it relates to Kanto, has been explored in discussions about why certain games remain culturally relevant decades after release. Kanto represents a specific moment in gaming history when portable consoles were becoming powerful enough to create expansive worlds, but were still limited enough to require creative solutions. This balance between ambition and constraint resulted in a region that felt complete without being overwhelming. Kanto's design philosophy, focused on player agency within a structured narrative, has influenced countless games beyond Pokémon. The open-world exploration seen in modern titles can trace elements of its DNA back to Kanto's interconnected routes and non-linear progression. The emphasis on collecting, documenting, and cataloging creatures inspired monster-collecting games ranging from Digimon to Yokai Watch to Temtem, each attempting to capture what made Pokémon successful. The emotional resonance of Kanto's story, where a child leaves home and grows into a champion through perseverance and the bonds formed with their Pokémon, has been replicated in countless coming-of-age narratives across media. The themes of friendship, growth, and discovery that define Kanto's journey are universal, and their execution in the games demonstrated how interactive media could tell stories that felt personal to each player. Kanto's technical achievements, particularly given the constraints of the Game Boy, have been celebrated by developers and historians. The decision to compress an entire region with dozens of locations and 151 unique creatures into a cartridge with limited memory required innovative programming techniques. The game's code, analyzed by dedicated fans over the years, reveals creative solutions to hardware limitations that have become teaching examples in game development courses. The linked battle system, which allowed two Game Boys to communicate via link cable and battle in real time, was a technical achievement that laid groundwork for multiplayer gaming on portable consoles. The stability of these connections, the synchronization of data between devices, and the handling of different game states all required careful programming. The success of this system demonstrated that portable games could offer multiplayer experiences previously limited to home consoles. Kanto's save system, which used battery-backed RAM to preserve player progress, was essential to the game's design, but also introduced a source of anxiety for players worried about losing their data. The infamous "the save file is corrupted" message became a nightmare scenario that drove players to be cautious about turning off their Game Boys during save operations. This technical limitation, while frustrating, added stakes to the journey and made preserving progress feel important. The glitches present in Kanto's code, from Missing No to the item duplication exploit to the numerous ways to break the game's boundaries, have become legendary among players. These unintended features, rather than diminishing the game's reputation, added layers of depth that kept communities engaged for decades. The discovery of new glitches years after release demonstrated that Kanto's code contained secrets that went beyond what the developers intended. Kanto's role in establishing gaming conventions extends beyond Pokémon. The concept of a Pokédex, an in-game encyclopedia that fills in as players progress, inspired collection mechanics in countless other games. The idea of version exclusives, where different versions of the same game contain unique content that encourages trading, became a strategy used by other franchises to drive sales and social interaction. The structure of gym leaders as themed boss encounters, each requiring different strategies to defeat, influenced how other games approached boss design. The balance between making bosses challenging enough to feel rewarding, but accessible enough to prevent frustration, is evident in Kanto's gym leaders, each of whom can be defeated with the right preparation, but still pose a threat to unprepared players. Kanto's influence on portable gaming cannot be understated. The Game Boy, while not the first portable console, became the most successful in part due to Pokémon's popularity. The games demonstrated that portable devices could offer experiences as deep and engaging as home consoles, paving the way for the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, 3DS, and eventually the Switch. The decision to create a portable monster collecting RPG rather than a simplified version of a home console game showed that portable games deserved original content designed specifically for the platform. The social aspect of Kanto, from schoolyard trades to link cable battles, created a community experience that transcended the individual gameplay. Players shared stories of their journeys, compared teams, traded rare Pokémon, and battled to prove whose strategies were superior. This communal engagement turned Pokémon from a game into a cultural phenomenon, with Kanto serving as the shared foundation that united millions of players. Kanto's music, replayed in concerts, remixed by fans, and orchestrated for official releases, has transcended its origins as Game Boy chiptunes. The Pokémon 25th Anniversary Concert, featuring live orchestral performances of music from across the franchise, opened with themes from Kanto, acknowledging the region's foundational importance. The emotional response these melodies evoke in audiences, many hearing them for the first time in decades, demonstrates the lasting impact of Masuda's compositions. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed drifting through these quiet moments, there's another video waiting on the left of your screen. Let it play while you rest. You might discover something gentle before sleep takes you again.